Hey everybody, it's Hoosier Jedi with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 12 of The Flash called Crazy for You. And this is another really solid episode. Lots of, definitely lots of fun character stuff, particularly with Barry and Caitlin, and some important plot elements. So let's just kind of get right into things. Let's start with some of the smaller stuff first. First of all, we full on get to see Gorilla Grodd there at the Stinger at the end, and I gotta say, for TV CGI, that's a pretty darn well done gorilla. And we do see him having written his name on the wall, indicating to us, of course, that he has the ability to understand English. So it has been confirmed that we're going to see Barry go up against him sometime later this season. So that's going to be pretty darn crazy, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now, on the Ronnie Raymond front, thanks to Pied Piper, we finally find out that Ronnie and Martin Stein were merged. I kind of wish there'd been a scene where that was more fully laid out, like we actually get to see Caitlin and Barry's reaction to that. Instead, they just sort of talk about it later. I mean, I know time is limited on TV shows, but that really sort of seems like a moment that we should have seen Caitlin's reaction to that. Instead, we get the moment of them sort of dealing with that when Cisco confesses to Caitlin that he and everybody else that he's the one that sealed Ronnie in the reactor or the particle accelerator, whatever. And while that was a nice moment, it does kind of compare in comparison to Ronnie Raymond and Martin Stein have been merged into one being. So I think that was, yeah, kind of a missed moment there. Let's see. Not a huge amount to say about Linda Park this episode. She's only really introduced here, and in the comic, she's actually Wally West's girlfriend and later wife. Now, they have said they're going to bring Wally on later at some point. There hasn't been any casting or anything. But here, I think it's just kind of they're reworking things here instead of, basically her being a romantic interest for Wally. She's going to be a romantic interest for Barry. And I don't really have a problem with that. In the comics right now, Barry's actually dating some girl named Patty who works with him at the police station. So I don't really have a problem with that. I was just sort of laughing though. I was like, "Hey, have heard?" Linda, she's like, "Hey, have you heard of this app that you sort of zap somebody's phone and they get your contact information?" Well, if Barry doesn't have that app, how in the world were you able to do that? And I'm pretty sure there's more than one app that does that. I mean, phones doing that. Maybe it's just because I was over in Asia for so many years, but that's really, really common. I don't know. Maybe it took a while for that technology to go over here. I really don't know. So let's see. What do we got to talk about? Nothing really big going on with Dr. Wells this episode. Oh yeah, of course we want to talk about Barry having a nice moment with his dad. I mean, again, these moments that we get with between Barry and his dad are just like knife to the heart every time. And it just goes to show that the show was so smart to bring in John Wesley Shipp as Barry's dad, because that speech at the end, it's kind of like passing the torch from the 90s Flash to the modern Flash. And it's also just a wonderful moment between father and son. It's just acted so well. And there's also that whole thing with his dad getting stabbed that sort of factors into what Barry said before, that he'd spent all this time thinking about how he could get his dad out of prison, and how he'd even thought about how he could do it now that he had these speed powers, and he uses that idea to get revenge on the guy who stabbed his dad. So yeah, I mean that was I suppose a little dark for Barry, but then again, the guy did stab someone. He was obviously gonna get more time for that, so Barry just sort of made it worse. I mean that guy's probably never getting out of prison, but he is. They do take the time to make it clear that he's probably like the sort of guy who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. So it's not that big a deal, I think. So I think the main thing a lot of people were just on fire about this episode was, of course, Barry and Caitlin going out to karaoke. And there's obviously some major chemistry, and it's very unspoken between the two of them. I think they kind of realize that, hey, we're feeling attracted to each other, but they're friends. They're both kind of coming out of very awkward situations with other people, and rushing headlong into something would be really dumb. And they're both mature enough to realize that. And there's also the thing that Barry also had recently had feelings for Felicity. And again, you can't really blame anybody for not wanting to just take the plunge. But I think it's kind of one of like what Barry said to Felicity. You know, how about basically on paper they're such an excellent couple, but in the reality of things, it's just not as simple as that. Maybe our personalities really are compatible and we do get along really well and find each other attractive, but it takes more than that. We can't just pretend that we don't have emotional baggage related to other people. Like, in Barry's case, the main thing is Iris. And of course, Caitlin's still dealing with this whole Ronnie situation, which is not going away anytime soon. And in fact, is really going to come to a head next episode. Still, it was a really wonderful scene, and Grant Gustin got the chance to show off that he's really very good at singing. He's actually billed as Grant Gustin musical artist on the tags on YouTube. So, yeah. And it was pretty hilarious, just that scene at the end where Caitlin's like, "Yeah, I don't mind if you sneak a peek," and then they just sort of Barry stays there with her while she falls asleep. I mean, it's all super cute. You can't help but love it. And then let's see. We also have this whole situation between Cisco and Hartley. And I really like how they're sort of setting this up as sort of Hartley and Cisco as I guess hero and villain. Sort of like Hartley's going to be Cisco's own personal villain. I mean, Dr. Wells isn't hugely concerned with Hartley. I mean, worst comes to worst, he's the Reverse Flash. He can take Hartley out basically anytime he really wants to. All he has to do is find him. And somebody as smart as Harrison Wells, he can probably find Hartley if he really decides he wants to. So, but again, I do really think the idea of kind of having Cisco have his own little personal nemesis in Hartley, that's really cool, because there's also that whole "you're not the only one who understands vibrations" Hartley. And again, we've talked about him maybe using some of Hartley's technology to maybe develop the vibe persona. Probably not this season, but possibly next season. And Cisco kind of deciding to, okay, I'm going to costume up myself and go and stop Pied Piper. Cisco being Cisco, he would of course totally give himself a superhero name. But here we do get to see that Hartley and Cisco were again very evenly matched. Hartley does get away in the end, but Cisco does outthink him a few times. He does, get the drop on Hartley, and even Hartley concedes that he underestimated Cisco. And I can't remember the name of the fellow who plays Hartley, because I can never remember 90% of the actors' names on the shows I watch. But I will give the guy credit. That bit where he's talking about the shadow of Martin Stein burned onto the side of the building, and he talks about how, like, this is what happened in Hiroshima. He is totally right. That is 100% for real. And he even says a word in Japanese that I didn't catch what it was, and I don't know what it would be because I've never had any particular reason to learn that word in Japanese. But if you're a regular watcher of my reviews, I lived in Japan and I speak decent Japanese. I'll give the actor credit. He actually does have, at least for one word, reasonably good Japanese pronunciation. This is just kind of one of those things, just because I'm familiar with the language, whenever I hear characters who supposedly speak Japanese and they go out there and they totally butcher the pronunciation, I'm just like, no. I mean, like, there's this old episode of Heroes where Noah speaks some Japanese, and I mean, the actor this is like the worst Japanese I have ever heard come out of anybody's mouth in my entire life. And I'm not knocking the actor for that. I mean, speaking a language you have no idea you don't speak, and you have no idea how to say things properly, of course you're going to sound horrible. But it's just like, oh God, couldn't you have said somebody who understands this language, just sort of smooth it out? I mean, Japanese is not a difficult language to pronounce. Once you understand how the vowels work, you're pretty much good to go. Oh boy, that was, yeah. Okay, and our villain this time around is Peekaboo. Now, I vaguely remember her from the Jeff Johns run on the comics, and I think her motivation was she was trying to steal something to help her dad. I think she was like maybe stealing organs from the hospital. Again, I only read the story with that she was the story that introduced her the one time, so I don't really remember very much about her. Except that she also one of the things I do remember though, she had this really ridiculous costume that was very much from the school of, okay, I've got superpowers now, I'm going to make a costume out of stuff that I have in my closet, which was kind of a deliberate thing. She was not meant to be a professional supervillain. This was something that she was basically just a desperate person who had superpowers and was using them for to help someone that she cared about. And here it's basically the kind of the same situation. She's a Peekaboo here is a very great example of the old saying of someone who loved well but not wisely. I think that might be from Shakespeare or something. And she really does love her boyfriend. She's very dedicated to him. She's willing to really go out there and put everything on the line to help him and get him out of jail, and so that they and eventually pay off this guy so that they can be together. And then at the moment of truth, the guy disappears on her. Somehow he manages to escape the Flash, despite the Flash literally being there and them being in a tunnel. So there's not really a way that he could not see where this guy went. But okay, whatever. And then she ends up, being locked up in Star Labs. And give the actress credit. The fear and the panic and the desperation when she's teleporting around in that cell that she can't get out of. I mean, it's very palpable. So you can't really help but feel sorry for her. I mean, she was again just somebody who made some bad choices, but she wasn't really an evil person. So I mean, I do like that they are trying to make show us that not everybody who gets these powers is going to be a straight up bad guy, like say Chroma, right, aka Rainbow Raider, or somebody who becomes a pure hero like Barry. Again, I think a lot of people would probably not go out and start murdering people and whatnot if they got powers, but they probably would go out and do some stupid and selfish things. And let me see. I think that covers everything that I had to say about this episode. Again, really good episode. Sets up some nice stuff for next time around, and we have some really wonderful character moments. I definitely loved the 80s music and the karaoke scene because I love 80s music. And yeah, just all in all, a really nice effort. So with that, guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good